So there's an album on my playlist. There was an album early 90s when I was going through my own spiritual crisis. And he had been a part of a Southern gospel group called the Imperials. He's just an awesome, incredible vocalist named Russ Taff.
Yep.
And Russ Taff had his own journeys, but he has this album called I Still Believe. And that album,
that's powerful,
changed me. That
So
album
cool.
kept me in the faith.
Yeah.
And there's a song on there called I Still Believe. And it's not a Christian song because like the choir did it. It's actually in Lost Boys. There's like a bunch of different versions of it.
Yeah.
But to hear him sing it after everything he had been through on his spiritual journey spoke to me. And he's got thinking, and so there are those moments that just rip you apart.
Yeah.
And you can empathize with it. And so you see someone like a Jeremiah, like a Jonah, who in their brokenness are saying things.
Yeah.
And this was something we actually talked about yesterday when we started prepping, is that for me as someone who is not creative, you say things. And although I have never would have put it that way, I can say that guy gets it. That's exactly how I feel.
Sure.
So the creative's gift to the church is the capacity to put into words or into image with art or whatever, things that cannot be expressed. And somehow God has given you the gift to express it so that me, who thinks differently, can latch onto it and in some ways make it mine.
Yeah.
And that's how we get, no, that's my song. Well, such and such wrote it. I'm like, I could care less who wrote it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it goes without saying that this is an ecosystem. So flip that around. It's like when I'm sitting under your teaching, I'm jotting down notes all the time of something that you say, a phrase that sticks out to me, and your take on a passage where I'm like, oh, that could be sung to reinforce theology.
Right.
And I'll go back and I'll try to write a song to it. So it's like this whole cycle, which is really cool.
Yeah. So, well, if you're listening to me to influence worship, I want to know, why do you hate Take It All? And why are you too much of a coward to play it on church?
You need to talk to youth about that.
Wow.
That's a youth song.
Take it all.
That's
So
a
Take
youth
It All.
song.
Actually,
Home run.
There's other songs that I feel like we need to press him about before Take It All.
Yeah, I don't understand
press
why
me
he
for it.
doesn't like, I'm not going to say her name because she's actually correct. But there have been songs I've asked him, I'm looking right at the camera, that I've asked him in response to a sermon I was preaching. No, I wasn't going to do this.
Okay.
I wasn't going to do this.
Let's go.
No,
let's do
no,
it.
I
Let's
wasn't.
do
No,
it.
no.
Because we could also talk about
No,
spiritual authority
stop.
and
Oh, okay, all right, right.
following your pastor's leadership.
Yeah,
And,
okay. So no, but
it was when you were still our
we're
estranged
joking.
uncle at the time.
Yeah, that's true. I was the estranged uncle. That's right. So
yeah, you're back now. So
yeah.
I would do it now.
Yeah, okay. All right.
And
But
then I just
that's
say-
not what he told me yesterday. He said, I didn't have time to learn the song. That's exactly what's his excuse yesterday. But there is
Time
this thing, by the
will-
way, there's this thing with me,
Yeah.
because I'm kind of cheesy when it comes to worship.
It's
So
not
anytime
cheesy.
I said, no, it's not. But there's just this thing with me that like
This would be perfect.
This
for
would be
this sermon.
perfect.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
and everyone who is actually really good and ingrained in worship in my life is all like, I probably wouldn't. And I'm like, oh.
You're ahead of the curve.
No,
you're
no,
a visionary.
no.
We just haven't. We don't see it
This
yet.
is a Star Trek reference too. I get warped on a regular occasion. So those of you who know what getting warped means,
Is that right?
that
Oh,
is right.
Sorry,
Yes,
no.
the
I
film is
missed.
out,
I
but
missed the.
yeah. So anyway, what are some other things?
Just to talk, like songs to talk about, or
Oh well, the other thing is it's funny because we are talking about songs that mean something. So
Yeah.
I say this thing, and I think I got it from Rick Warren. So let me lead with that.
Cool.
But that Canaan loves every time I say it.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes people say, "Oh, well, worship really didn't do anything for me today." And my answer is always, "Well, that's good because we weren't worshiping you."
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's
yeah, I feel like that topic doesn't need any more explanation than that.
yeah,
like
yeah. Who are you worshiping? Worshiping shouldn't be doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
anyway,
exactly.
if it's not doing anything for you, you're the one doing it wrong.
Yeah.
yeah.
The common
Yeah.
denominator.
And there's one thing, if it's like a consistent thing, like you just don't, I think if you just don't like in the church environment that you're in, the worship style, and just go to a different church.
Yeah.
Just go to a different church. Like you can like
I would almost I would say
I mean, I
before
think
you
you
go to
should-
a different church, I would say grow up a little bit.
Check your heart.
Yeah,
but
check
I
your
think
heart.
there's
Honestly,
some situations, yes, but like also like sometimes if you're in like there's a song that might particularly bother you, or you might be in a situation where it's feels like the same thing every single Sunday, and just I think it's fine to just say, I'm going to change it up. And I think
if you can't stay there without being and you're negative and you're bitter and you're mad, probably, but you do need to still check your heart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think yes. I think that's also, I don't think that it's necessarily the wrong thing
Because
every
church
time
should
to
be
just,
the worship and the preaching and
Yeah.
the community of service
Yeah.
and the
Oh,
heart
there's
of it.
so many
Like,
different elements.
There's
Yeah.
all the different reasons to be a part of a church. And there are people that pick church solely because they like the music there.
Yeah.
Or they
And
pick a
then
church because they like the preaching.
It doesn't last.
And then it doesn't last.
Usually,
Yeah.
if you're just selecting your favorite thing, and that's the hard thing about the American Western culture,
Right.
with music and worship. You know,
Yeah,
worship
yeah.
through
Worship
song,
as music,
or
not
worship as music,
as theology.
is that's now kind of like everyone has to be to a certain excellence level or style
Yeah.
or something for people
Right.
to think it's any good. I mean, I was gonna ask, like, do you think it's okay to say I didn't like the music today? I feel like that's a more appropriate. Not that you should be hypercritical anyway, but
I
like
think
make
that's
the
a
distinction.
Better, yeah, that's a better distinction to make than saying I'm not being fed.
Kanan was pitchy today, man.
Yeah.
Huh? Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe I just need more
Something going on with
maturity
your
on the
ears?
subject, honestly, because there's also things like just sometimes when you're sitting in church and you're like, okay, I'm having a tough time with the preaching. I'm having a tough time with the worship. and it's just not.
Yeah,
working.
so that's I think where that all starts
Yeah.
seriously, and we're joking, but let's turn it a little bit serious, is that journey has to start with how am I doing,
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
with what are they doing.
Yeah.
Because until you can, here's the thing, you could leave and be appropriate, but if you haven't, you're taking that discontent to the next place.
Yeah.
And if you haven't resolved that discontent before you leave,
Yeah.
you will find that discontent at the next
Yeah.
place.
Yeah.
Also,
You just will.
Yeah, I felt like I was in a situation where the worship. I didn't have, but the teaching was really tough for me. Like it was really tough, and just I had grown up with such a different style, and so I went to this place and I was by myself. Like I wasn't with my family or anything, so I was just in a situation, and it was just not. So every morning before, as I was getting ready, I would listen to Tim Keller, or I'd listen to John Tyson, or I'd listen to a bridge like Bethany Allen at Bridgetown. Like I would literally go and find. So I'm like, okay, I'm not like I'm gonna go to church. This is not me. This is not my filler for church, but I'm gonna listen to something else to get. And I listened to it before. I feel like before made it better because then I had that like I'd already
Going in
been
with a half full
challenged
tank.
in a message to like be a better person, do a better
Yeah,
like I'd
yeah.
already been challenged by something. So then I wasn't gonna go sit in church after immediately being challenged on something in my heart and then be like, well, this sucks. Like
and then
I
you
just
can-
kind of sit. I just
Yeah.
sit there.
Oh, it's such an interesting topic because then you can get into the topic of what is church for? Like what
Yeah.
what
What
is
is
what
church
is
for?
like am I supposed
It's
to be
for
getting
more
fed?
than just.
More
Yeah.
Yeah,
and it's like
yeah.
it's multifaceted. We're there
Yeah.
to worship, where community is huge.
Yeah, am I
and then-
serving at my church?
Am I
Am I
learning?
learning? Am I growing? Am I
That-
being fed? Well, I'm not necessarily here to feed you. It's more cooking class than
Yeah, self-feeding,
feeding you,
yeah.
right? And there's all these things that, and it's funny because we hear different versions of the same comment,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Which is, oh, the preaching. Why did you leave your church? Well, the preaching wasn't doing it for me. You're like, well, okay,
All right.
because you're implying that they weren't preaching God's word, or you're implying that it was heretical, or it just
Sadly
wasn't-
now, yeah.
Well, but
was gonna
I
say.
mean, I'm giving people the benefit of the doubt.
Sure,
So really, what it comes down to is it's not actual content. It 9 times out of 10, I should say, it will come down to style.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And style is cultural. Style is a facade. Style is kind of a lie. I mean, when it turns that way, and I think that
I mean, and just like with social media and the internet,
Oh,
like we now
yeah.
have access immediately to the best communicators in the world.
and the best,
Um,
quote unquote, the best worship leader musicians in the world.
Right.
And
And
so,
so it's just
you
like-
go and you do that, and then you go to your church in wherever, you go to, like I go to the church in Siloam Springs, Arkansas, my little church, or my country church in Crossett, Arkansas, or whatever, where my parents live. And I show them this video from Elevation and say, well, why can't we do this? You're going to break the guy's heart,
Totally.
right?
Totally.
This is what speaks to me. And you're like,
Well,
wow.
sorry. We don't
you
have
just
a
set an impossible
30-foot
standard.
LED wall.
Right. Yeah.
No, I mean, and kind of not to go too.
And we have to own our privilege, by the way,
Oh,
because
we're
we're
at
incredibly
an
well resourced.
Exceptional.
Right.
Yeah,
too.
Right. We have a whole team to make this thing
Yeah.
happen, which is a luxury.
Mm-hmm.
But like even on the dark side of that, I think within our church culture that allows for people's gifts to get them into the door earlier than their
Yep,
character's ready
absolutely.
for.
Yeah.
Social
And
media
so-
for sure.
Yeah.
Because you can just,
Yeah, you
I
could
think I
have a-
can sing, and then
Right.
just hit, and
Oh,
then
you wanna be a
and
worship
and you might
pastor?
be able to sing, and you sing a worship song, and then boom, and you covered a worship song once, and then all of a sudden you're
Yep.
Dove Awards worship,
Yep.
brand new worship leader of the year, and you're like, what
Right,
happened?
Just
right,
happened, yeah.
Just
because
happened.
skill is what people are looking for first
Yeah.
because they're trying to keep up with whatever people are watching online.
Exactly.
No.
And so I think we'd have less falls if people
Get
kind
developed.
of hired for character and that stuff rather than
Yeah.
like, can they kind of keep up with Chris
Well,
Brown
I mean,
at
that
elevation?
is, again, not to self-promote, but yeah, go back to our 1 Corinthians season. I mean, that is, some of you are Paul people, some of you are Apollos people, some of you are Peter people, and some of you are this, and some of you are that. And it comes from, a lot of it was the style. There's scholarship. There's little scholarship that thinks it was their speaking style that were the divisions.
Yeah.
And Apollos was known as being very charismatic and very engaging, and Paul was notoriously boring, and he wasn't interesting. He was right and he was smart, but he wasn't interesting.
Yeah.
So you have like this difference between this incredibly high motivated, fun, interesting, great speaker but his theology was a little thin, versus this sort of theologically precise mastermind, but he was kind of boring. And so people were like picking their favorites.
Yeah.
There was no beef between the two of them,
Yeah.
but
People
even
did
Paul
it on their behalf.
saw Apollos' rise and said, your maturity has not reached
careful.
your skill level, so we're actually going to pull you back a little bit and let your development catch up with your skill. And
So good.
Yeah, and in social media,
So
it's
needed.
changed it infinitely more.
Yeah.
Infinitely more.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
so, yeah. But I
Super
don't, yeah.
Well, let's end it up. I want to hear to end this. What, Kanan, I want to give you a chance to plug some worship artists, churches, songs, albums. What are you listening to right now? What are you loving? Is there anyone like you've worked with recently? I saw on social media you just got back from like a writing thing in Nashville. Like, what are you excited about in worship music right now?
Man, well, I think that there's a lot of people doing cool stuff that music takes forever. As a side note, like there's songs that we wrote 2 weeks ago that people won't hear for like a year and some change,
Wow.
but
Yeah.
just crazy. But there's just people doing some really cool stuff right now. Personally, this is more like inspiring, like just creatively. I love it. One House Worship down in LA. It's an extension of the Potter's House, but they've got really, really cool stuff that they're doing. They released a song called Fear Not recently that I've been listening to and loving. Mitch Wong from he's everywhere, but he's based out of the Belonging Co.
Yeah.
One of the strong. He helped write Believe For It, by the way.
Yeah.
Okay.
I love The Blood. He's on The Blood.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
wrote that. That song is so
Yeah.
good.
Belonging Co. is like the Avengers of like
Yeah.
probably all of our favorite
They've
writers
assembled everyone.
and some of our favorite artists. So
I think you meant
check
the
out
Justice League. But
the
that's
Justice League, sure. So check out the Belonging Co. You know this group called New Life Collective. I think is doing some
Yeah,
cool
yeah.
stuff.
They're good kids. Good kids.
Yeah, no, I whenever people ask me this, I always
Yeah.
draw blanks. But
Yeah.
between I mean, Elevation, I think is at peak, top of their game right now. There's as far as just momentum, they're really breaking rules in cool ways musically, and it's inspiring. So, yeah, I've been listening, but I've been more in the producing like vein lately. So I haven't been taking in as much as I usually do, unless practicing and getting ready for sets. Yeah, so I love Mitch though. Go find all of his songs.
Yeah, he's a really great songwriter. He really is.
Rita Springer, she's a queen.
There's a Rita Springer song that it's older,
Defender?
but how did you know I was gonna say Defender? Because that came out in like 2017 or 2016.
You want to know a really wild story?
Oh yeah, well yeah.
So Sophia was born in her birthday's about to come up. She was born in 2001,
Yeah.
right before Christmas. So that's when we were down in Spanaway, Washington, I was working, not even at that point we weren't working yet for my wife's, is where we wound up being on staff for 2.5 years at Sound Life Church.
Yeah.
Well, Rita's sister, Roxanne, was a part of that church. So Rita came and did music for a Christmas Eve service that year in
Super cool.
2001. That was the night Sophie was dedicated.
What?
So Rita
That's
was the
crazy.
worship leader the night
Crazy.
that Sophie was dedicated. Because
That
we
is so
dedicated her
cool.
like just like
Yeah.
3 or 4 days after she was born. But
Yeah. That is so cool.
So the Carpenters, my in-laws, have a long relationship with Rita. And
Yeah.
so,
She told me that she was local. We wrote a song called Reconstruction
Oh wow.
this past
okay.
week. So you
Oh,
may or may not hear
dang.
that one day.
So
Maybe
she has
not,
an
but-
old song called Phenomena.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
and I, Phenomena.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
No.
that's all I know about
Yeah,
Rita.
no,
so.
I discovered Defender like a year ago or 2 years ago,
it's
and that
so good.
song,
Oh my gosh.
it is just,
It's visceral.
it is. That is just like, I don't know how to describe it. Have you listened to it?
I don't know. I was just looking at a song that I recently discovered too, by
You
a Brazilian worship leader.
Oh yes, you love this.
I'm being serious. She gave me a look. Look at that look on her face.
Well, I'm just curious
No,
as to.
it's a Fernandino,
Uh-huh.
and it's Os que confiam.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm gonna tell you something. This is the hardest rock and worship song
Dang.
since Yours Forever.
They go hard.
Dang.
It's actually
They
harder
go
than
hard.
Yours Forever,
Dang.
and it's so good. And it's basically nothing can separate us from the love of God when you translate it. But
Yeah.
shout out to Fernandino. I don't understand
Phenomenal.
anything you're saying, but I'm with you.
You
bud.
feel it though.
I feel it.
It connects with your
I
spirit.
feel it.
That's
It
a part of
does.
the music.
It does. But I make sure that the lyrics that are connecting with my spirit are
Are-
lyrics that will then edify my spirit.
Yes, amen.
So yeah.
You heard it here
Yeah.
first, folks.
Yeah.
Well,
so shout out to Fernandino.
Yeah.